Hello, Southminster. Hope you're all safe and sound. We're all tucked in here at our house, doing okay. Welcome to our office. We're not getting out much these days. I imagine that's true for most of you as well. But we did get out the other day. We decided to go over to the forest preserve not too far from our house and hike on one of the trails there. And it was one of those kind of gray, overcast days. And the trees obviously are still very brown and lifeless, and the air was cold, and it had that piercing quality to it. I imagine you know the quality I'm talking about. And combined with being sheltered in place and life feeling like it's slowly grinding to a halt because of COVID-19, I couldn't help but think about all those movies about the end of the world. You know the ones I'm talking about, right? Where, zombies or a natural disaster or a plague wipes out the world and all that's left are like a handful of people scattered around the world. People who are now simply trying to survive in what's left of a scorched, ruined earth. And as it pans around to kind of show you the environment that these people now live in, all that seems to be left is this gray, cold, and lifeless wilderness. Well, that might be how life is starting to feel for many of you right now. I mean, you remember running errands or going to school each day and church on Sundays. You remember maybe kicking back in your recliner and watching a game. I mean, it really wasn't that long ago. Maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks ago. But now we're not. Now we can't. So we're left wondering, when will life resume again? On top of that, we hear about the tumble that the market is taking and how people are or will be losing their jobs due to economic hardship. We're hearing about more and more people getting sick and how many are dying because of COVID-19. We're hearing about how our leaders are scrambling to find answers, but they don't really seem to be coming fast enough. So maybe you're wondering, why is this happening? And when will it all be over? The problem with the wilderness is that it doesn't support life very well. Finding life in the wilderness requires a transformative touch. There's a great story in the Gospel of Mark. When the disciples had returned 2 by 2 from exorcising demons and healing people, Mark says when they returned, they gathered around Jesus, sharing all their stories of everything that they had seen and done and the ways that God was moving through them. And you can imagine Jesus standing there smiling as he heard the disciples share all their amazing stories. And after hearing their stories, Jesus, knowing the toll that ministry can take, says, "Come away with me to a deserted place to rest." Mark says the place where they were was crowded with people who were just coming and going. And you can't rest and recharge when you can't relax. So Jesus takes his disciples away to the wilderness. Or so they thought. I mean, when they reached what they thought would be this deserted place, Jesus and his disciples were met by this huge crowd of people, over 5,000 people. People who saw them leave and followed them here. This crowd was hoping in some way. This is why they had followed Jesus, because they were hoping in some way that Jesus would rescue them from whatever deserted place they were in. You see, Mark describes the crowd as sheep without a shepherd. And Jesus being Jesus, he wasn't going to disappoint them. Mark says the crowd was hungry, and the disciples wanted Jesus to send the crowd away into town to find food, to find something to eat. Jesus, though, was moved with compassion, just like any good shepherd seeing lost sheep would be. And he tells his disciples, "You give them something to eat." They said, our puny supply of bread and fish are not enough to feed this crowd of people. There's no way. You see, the disciples couldn't see past their scarcity and therefore had no hope that the crowd could be fed. Now, you think they would know better after following Jesus for so long. But no such luck. So Jesus takes the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, what the disciples had accepted as a scarce offering, and therefore not enough, and he transformed them into an abundant supply that was more than enough. Jesus went to the wilderness to rest. And instead, he transforms a deserted place, incapable of supporting life, into a place of abundance and full of life. We may feel right now like we're in the wilderness. Like the disciples, we might be feeling that life, and therefore hope, really is becoming scarce. But Jesus says we shouldn't accept scarcity because it's only an illusion. He says to accept our scarcity is to accept the wilderness as our final destination, and therefore accept a world without hope. Jesus then goes on to show us that we don't have to accept a scarce, lifeless, and hopeless world. Jesus shows us a world created, a world that belongs to God, and therefore is a world full of God's abundance. If we walk with and if we follow Jesus, we will witness how God can disrupt the world by transforming scarcity into abundance. You see, the hope we have right now is that neither COVID-19 nor the other deserted places of our lives will be our final destination. So I want to encourage you. If you're feeling like you're in the wilderness right now because of COVID-19, or maybe it's something totally unrelated to COVID-19, I encourage you to look for life, to look for Jesus. Jesus can take the deserted places of your life and transform them into places of rest and renewal. I mean, after all, if Jesus can take or can feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish, then he can certainly take care of you. Remember, as Julian of Norwich said, all shall be well. All shall be well. All manner of things shall be well. Blessings, and be healthy.